You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, author, speaker, mentor, and guide. I'm here today to discuss living life after adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to your joy, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Live Free podcast. Today, we have Noemi on the podcast. Noemi is a co-owner of Podcast Connections booking agency. She helps entrepreneurs and business owners enrich their lives through connections, sharing their knowledge and connecting them to quality podcast shows like this one. In addition, Noemi is dedicated to helping experts grow their business with interviews. She started working in the online marketing space in 2007. Noemi has a master's degree in Danish literature and language. She is a linguist. She is a content creator and a master organizer. Most importantly, she loves making hand-sewn collages and playing on her drums in her downtime. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about today. So let's get started with Noemi. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast, Noemi. Thank you for being here and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me today, Christine. It's an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Now, where in the world are you tuning in from?
I live in Cyprus, on the Mediterranean island of Cyprus in Europe. So yeah, it's a bit far from the US. No, sorry, you're in Canada. So it's even,
Yeah.
yeah, the other
Oh,
side
well,
of the
that's
pond.
beautiful. I'll have to come visit. Um,
Yes, please.
yes, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. I know that you have a really fascinating story about, really how you got through some dark times in a really unique way that's unique to you. So let's begin with kind of your background and what brought you to where you are today and what brought you on the podcast.
Wow, that's a great and very complex question. So, I was born, let's start from the beginning. I won't bore you with all the details from my childhood, but I was born and raised in Hungary in Central Europe. And I always loved traveling. And I was an exchange student in Denmark for a while. So I speak different languages, Danish, Swedish. I ended up at the university. I had a master's degree in Scandinavian linguistics. And then at age was like 23, I moved abroad from my home country because wasn't really livable when it came to my master's degree. So I ended up living and working in Ireland for 7 years. But seven is always a magic number, and then you move. There's some change will come in your life after 7 years, and then move to Cyprus, to the beautiful island of Cyprus in 2011. And yeah, so that's basically my journey around Europe and around the world.
Fabulous.
And yeah, it was an exciting journey for sure.
No kidding. Absolutely. And I just want to mention Ireland. I was recently in Ireland, and oh my goodness, my husband and I said to each other so many times, we're like, we could live here, this place we stay. So yeah, love Ireland. Great choice there. Haven't been to Cyprus yet, but that's on the list.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's just sometimes can be very cold and rainy. So that's why basically we moved from an island to Cyprus, because this is like the island of summer. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I digress. I'm sorry. Continue your story.
yeah, so I became an entrepreneur in 2007. I was kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, but nobody in my family was an entrepreneur before. So I became an entrepreneur in 2007, and we had an online travel related business up till 2020, and then from 2020 we started our own other company because of the pandemic hit and travel industry collapsed. So we had to pivot, and the pivot was our podcast booking agency, and that's what we're still doing. But I love working and running an agency. But my big thing is being an artist. I'm also a mixed media collage artist, and I never studied art, and I just I it came to me basically. And it was a special moment in 2012 when I was expecting my son, and somehow I just got the message from the universe: you have to make collages. And I love upcycling, I love repurposing things, and it just, yeah, it just came to me. And so I started to make collages, mixed media collages, and since then I just couldn't stop, and I just loved it. And as you mentioned, I had a couple of things happening in my life. Obviously, lost a business in 2020 because of COVID, so we had to, start from scratch and running and starting an own business. But that was just the least that I had to struggle with, because in 2017 my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he the doctors gave him about 6 months, 1 year, up to 1 year to live, and he stayed with us until 2019, so 2 years. But those 2 years were hard on the whole family, and raising a small child, also running a business, plus looking after across all these countries, my dad, because he was in Hungary and I was in Cyprus. So it was really hard on me as well. And then he passed away in 2019, and then an accident happened to my grandma, and she passed away actually the same year. So it was kind of a roller coaster of emotions and grief and anxiety and trauma. I'm an only child, and I only have my mom, and so really we could just be there for each other and support each other. So it wasn't an easy ride. And also, I don't know, like death kind of, and especially cancer within my family was like a big thing. And I lost my granddad to cancer, my uncle to cancer, my best friends to cancer. So it was always somehow in my life, and it was a lot to deal with. So when COVID started and I was grieving, I needed something. So I stopped watching the news. I stopped watching television, like
Good
then and
idea.
there. And that
Mhm.
was back in 2020, and I never looked back. And so every evening, I just started to work on a new collage, like, or maybe the same collage for a couple of weeks. But that was my safe space, basically. And I started to make these collages every single evening. And
Right. That's
yeah,
beautiful. I want to first mention I'm so sorry for your losses.
thank you.
That's quite a bit of loss. And now
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you moved, you were in this grieving space. Is that when you had the message like, you need to begin art? Did that time kind of, did that timing match up? And had you ever done art prior to this? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I started in 2012, like, just making collages. And then I became
Right.
more serious with making collages. I had a few exhibitions, group exhibitions with people, art installations, and that was all before COVID. And yeah, I was really in my space, so I really enjoyed that. But because of COVID, everything stopped. So I had to kind of reinvent myself as an artist, because there was no space to show my art, to do anything. So
Oh,
basically,
yes.
it stopped me. And that was this time when I went back to art again, and I knew that's my safe space. And I just felt that I had to do something, otherwise I'm probably going crazy. And that was art actually what healed me and helped me to go through all the sorrow and the grief.
Mm, okay, I love that. It was kind of a reinventing, a
Yes.
reintroduction, a
Yeah.
different type of art. What did you move into? So it was you had been doing the collages. What did you move into in this new space where you couldn't, go and you could there was nowhere to sell these things or do anything like that? What evolved for you in that time?
Yes, it was really interesting because I mean we are in Cyprus and this is not US or Canada. So like online shopping was kind of like unheard before the pandemic. It basically we did got introduced during that time. So you couldn't go to the shops, you couldn't really order anything online. So I was just trying to find what I've got at home to start to make collages. So I had like a few canvases I didn't like or I painted on them. So okay, so let's make like new type of collages, and I started to make this new type of art which like I hand sew basically uh, um postcards, photographs, vintage photographs, textile, like you can see behind me,
Mhm.
on a canvas. So I don't use glue, but I sew everything together. So kind of I'm sewing my family's memory together on canvas. It's like a diary, but on a canvas. So
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that was
that's
the new
beautiful.
style I started to do back in 2020 and 2021, and I just couldn't stop because I really enjoyed the process, the journey of making a piece of art.
That's wonderful. And so what do you think that the arts served for you? Do you feel that it really centered you? Do you feel that it took you away from it? Do you feel what was the emotion that you felt when you started into your art in the middle of all this grief and pain, and what translated for you?
It is a brilliant question. Thank you. So it was really kind of a grounding experience and a meditative experience. I became so much calmer, relaxed, and because when you do something repetitive, like it's a very monotone task when you sew things together. And I was, my headphone was on and I was listening to audiobooks or music or podcasts or anything. So I was in my zone, in my safe space, and this is like a form of meditation. It's really hard to explain because you completely zone out. You don't care about the rest of the world and your family either. Sometimes you need your own time and own space. And it was just I'm studying more about the flow, experience the flow in your life, and that still is my flow when I sew collages or make art. Yeah, it's just amazing, fantastic.
I love that. So good. And I love how it stands to be such a lesson for people listening, who think that they should be meditating every day and all these sorts of things. And so they think they should get, sit down on the floor on a pillow with their legs crossed and try to push out all their thoughts. Well, okay, so that's great if that's something that resonates for you, but some people it doesn't resonate with. And so for you, what resonated for you was to quiet the mind, was to do this beautiful art. And so, technically you meditate every day. If
Yes.
someone were to ask, what are some of your health things that you do for yourself and your own mental health? I meditate every day. And that's truly what you do. And so that's beautiful and such a good reminder for the people listening because, so often we have this mold that we think we have to fit. And truly, I think that the goal and the hope when we are looking for our reprieve, our joy, our space where we feel in the flow. I love how you used in the flow is unique. It's unique
Yes.
to us. And your art is so unique. Like the way that you're sewing the memories onto the canvas. I think that that is so unique and it is so uniquely you. So beautiful work. Beautiful work.
Thank you
Beautiful
so
work.
much. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, it's my pleasure. And so yeah, so now where are you at here with your with the art that you do? It's been 4 years now.
Yes. Yeah,
How are
exactly.
you feeling? How has the art helped you? Where has it evolved to?
It's because it's an ongoing process, and I just enjoy the journey, and it's a passion project of mine. So I don't sell art because I have another business I rely on. So I don't need that kind of support from my art. And I'm always afraid that like if I do it as a business, it will change completely, and I don't want that because,
Hmm.
as I mentioned, this is my safe space. But obviously, I have goals and purposes. So I would love to have a solo exhibition based on my art and to show people what I'm about. And I also realized during these 4 years that I can help other people with art. And I did a couple of courses on art therapy, on positive psychology, And because I'm in the podcasting world, so it's like, okay, so let's go on podcasts and talk about how art can help heal people and how to cope with stress, anxiety, trauma, and grief. I'm not saying I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, so it won't. If you need that, you need to go to visit those specialists, but you can still help yourself and with the help of art, because for me the biggest thing was that I could really have art can really help express emotions that I couldn't do in any other way, or I couldn't talk about it. I didn't have a therapist, and couldn't really talk about it anyone with all that grief and thoughts that, the 60 80,000 thoughts we're having per day, and to cope with that. So it was a safe space, and even if I have, maybe you have disturbing thoughts about life or whatever is happening in your life, but this is a safe space where you can draw, where you can paint, and we can put all your negative energy or any thoughts in that piece of art. And it really helped to improve my self-esteem. The way I looked at myself is like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And although I was alone with it, so there was no support group or a community around me, but it really, really helped me to have a sense of accomplishment and pride when I looked at my finished project. And I was kind of sad because, oh, I love the journey and not the complete collage. So it's like, but then again, a new idea came to me. It's like, oh, let's do it. So it's just the journey and how much we can enjoy that. And the other thing that people miss, you always think that they have to be artists to do something like that, and it's so far from the truth, because you can buy a coloring book and color pencils or crayons or anything, and you can start doing it at home. And I remember this, just a short story about my mom, because she ended up, basically, she's stranded on Cyprus during the pandemic. So she stayed with us for about 3 months because there was no flights coming in and out. And yeah, it was a hard time for her. She was grieving too. Plus, there was a lot going on in our family with the online schooling and everything. So it was a lot of stress. And so I saw that she misses her home and she can go home. So I gave her one of my coloring books, like mandala coloring books, and a few, colored pencils. And she just started to make them. And I don't know, she finished like 50 or something like that. And
Oh,
she needed it. Like, clearly she needed it, but it really helped her to calm down and maybe smoke less, but she's a smoker, unfortunately. And so I could see the benefit that, she was a kindergarten teacher for 40 years, but still, she's not an artist by no means. So she was just sitting down and coloring. So this is just, one thing. Or you can make a gratitude jar where you put these little piece of paper, like, what are you grateful for different days of the year. So there are so many things people can do, and you don't have to be an artist in order to do that.
I 100% agree. I have two questions. I want to hear about what you like, what type of classes that you're doing. But first, I want to talk about what I found really fascinating. Initially, what I noticed about your art is how it really zoned you in. It really calmed your thoughts. Now I'm noticing that not only is that one part of it, but you're also releasing emotion into the piece. So
Yes.
there's two things happening. There's a stilling of the mind and releasing emotion into the piece. Tell me more about that aspect and how it translates for you. So how does it feel as you put the art in? Does it feel, you know, hard and gritty and dirty to get through those emotions, or does it feel more like a flow? How does it feel for you when you are getting emotions out into art?
It's definitely a flow, because all these memories were good memories. And so for me, like trips I made with my grandparents when I was 7, and we went to Venice, to Italy. And I found a postcard, so I made a collage around it. So that was all those great and wonderful memories came back to me. the way I experienced Venice for the first time. And I went back after that, but the first was magical, at age 7 or 8, or I don't know. And we took a bus trip from Hungary to Venice. So it was kind of a long trip. We didn't really take flights back then. So it was just magical. And it's not about like I'm always going back to the past and I'm living in the past, but somehow I just incorporate my past into my present and future. And it's kind of like building legacy for my family and for my parents, for my memories. And it's just wonderful to just put everything down there and I can just look at it, or maybe a photograph that my late dad took. And I made a collage around it because it meant so much to me. And I found the key and I put the key on the collage too. So I sew it on, and it's just wonderful. Even like if I think back to it, it's not something dark art. I used to do kind of dark art when my dad was in transition. So I made a lot of digital collages, and they were very dark. And I shared with my social media followers and friends, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on there?" I mean, that was some heavy stuff, but I needed to share that, and I needed to get out of my system. So it really depends on which phase I was in. So right now it's more like joyful, and back then, when my dad was in transition, it wasn't so much. I mean, it was more, it's a darker period of my art pieces for sure.
Mm. Gosh, I love this. This is so cool. So there's a time when you're going through the thick of it, that really like feel it to heal it
Mm.
space, and you're allowing yourself to feel it by creating this really dark art in a space that feels safe. And so you're really transmuting that experience at that time. You're really going through that because there's stages to resilience, and one of them, I believe anyway, in my own personal experience, is feel it to heal it. And it sounds like to me that that really is that's that opportunity to feel it to heal it is when you're kind of making darker. And then, after a period of time, there's 4 stages or so, I believe. In the final stage, there's kind of the find the gift stage, and it sounds to me like your art changed.
Yeah.
It morphed, and it got to the point where you were finding all these, you were not even not only just transmuting, but you were then alchemizing. You're taking the experience and you're turning it into these beautiful memories, and, remembering the magic of Venice, and, and remembering your father and all of these beautiful things. And so it sounds to me like you kind of went through the stages of grief
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
your art. So,
Absolutely.
maybe
Yeah.
you didn't want to see a counselor, maybe that felt icky to you. So you took something, and I don't know if that felt icky to you. I'm just saying, giving an example. But you took something that was kind of heavy, talk therapy, and decided to instead move in an art therapy. Am I
Yes.
right there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't conscious. I mean, because back then in 2020, I didn't do any art therapy. So this is like recent what I did the course. So I had nothing to do with it back then. It was just came to me naturally, unconsciously. And I just like, I need to do art. I just like, I felt it. And it's like, yes, let's do it. Let's start it because that's how I felt. And it was in my like a gut feeling. It's like, yeah, this will help me. Or no, I didn't even think about that. And I love music. I'm also a kind of a drummer, like at home. I have a like a drum circle too. I joined, and I have a djembe drum. I have a handpan, frame drum. So I love drumming and I love music. And because back then when I was grieving, I couldn't listen to music for many months. I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. So it was very strange. And because I got so emotional, like whatever I listened to. So I just stopped listening music, which was one of my favorite things in life, and I still love it. And so if I don't have music, so I have the books because I'm a bookworm. I love, reading or listening to audiobooks, and I love art. So let's do that because I just knew or felt, just like felt it in my gut that I need to express myself somehow. But these are the two things I love, making art and reading. So let's do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh man, that's amazing. Okay, well, that leads me to my next question. So now that you've finished the course and you have learned so much about what the expression of art can do in terms of a therapeutic sense, do you hold courses, classes, groups, online? What do you work towards now?
Maybe in the future I will do that. I mean, right now running my podcast booking agency like requires me like a lot of my energy. But just as I mentioned, because I do podcast guesting and I talk about this, what I'm talking about right now, this kind of helps other people. If I just help one person to cope with something which is going on in their life, and they just inspired me, like sitting down, drawing or painting or sewing something together, that's a win for me, because it's just, if it's only one person, I don't mind. And that's why I'm doing podcast guesting about talking about this, so I might be able to help some people out there who is listening today or tomorrow or somewhere later. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and I would love to there's kind of like a coaching program together with other people in a make right now. So hopefully that would help other people as well. And what I've learned, I can share with other, especially women, how to do that in their own lives.
Mm. Well, I have no doubt that you'll be very successful as you begin to move
Thank
into
you.
that space, because you really have a well-rounded knowledge of what art can do for people that are going through a lot. And I love that you've really married your business, which is assigning podcasting guesting,
Yeah.
with the fact that you've been able to utilize it now to express about art therapy and how it can help you. Tell me a little bit about the podcast guesting. So you help people who have a powerful story to tell their story. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So it's all about sharing stories and sharing knowledge. And also, I mean, obviously matchmaking people, the guests and the host together, but it's just so much more than that. And just helping them basically to share their stories, because everyone has a story to share. And those we can learn so much from those stories. So they are worth to share for sure. And I realized that I learned so much from just by listening podcasts than maybe at school about certain topics, because I think this is the new, I don't know, this is the new Netflix and YouTube and everything Spotify put together, and this is the new world of podcasting, because it's still booming, and I think it's just so important, and it will stay here for some time for sure, because there are so many great podcasts and podcast hosts out there, and we can learn so much, and they can help us, and it helped me a lot during these 4 years. So yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for the guests that you have sent my way.
It's
Because
my
I've had an
pleasure.
opportunity to share some really powerful stories through the guests that you've sent me, because you do this beautiful job of matchmaking, so people that you think that would be really good for my podcast, you send them my way. And so thank you so much for doing that. If someone wants to connect with you about your art, or if someone wants to connect with you about joining podcasts and telling their story, how might they get a hold of you?
They can always find me on LinkedIn. If you type my name in, Noemi Beres, I'm there with the little microphone sign next to my name. So you will find me. And if you visit podcastconnections.co, not com, but .co, that's our podcast booking agency's website. I also have my own name as my, website, noemiberes.com, and that's my art page where you can find my collages and some information about me. And I'm on Instagram, but like if you type my name in, Noemi Beres, I will come up everywhere. So it's for
Beautiful.
art and for podcast too.
Yes, the marketing extraordinaire. And then I'll have all those links that from our form that you can that'll pop up into the write up, and so that people can connect with
Thank
that.
you. Yeah.
Yes, it's an absolute pleasure. It's been a pleasure to have you. Is there anything that you'd like to leave the guests with, who are maybe going through something, that that you might be able to give them for a little bit of comfort in their time of adversity?
Yes. My only advice is just start making art today. Whatever you do, you can make a collage. You can cut out photos from a magazine or somewhere else and just glue them on a piece of paper, and that's just start doing it and just keep going, rinse and repeat it, and enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. Don't think about anything else, and treat it as meditation. You don't have to sit there, as you said, and sit in silence, And yeah, just do something that just lights you up and you experience flow during that time. So find something that really interests you.
Beautiful. Solid advice. Thank you so much for coming, Noemi. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us and for joining us all the way from where you are in Cyprus.
Thank you so much for having me today, Christine.
Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this last episode, then consider rating the podcast. Those few seconds that it takes makes a huge difference. Also, if you are interested in mentorship, transformational programs, or reading the book Unbroken, Rising Above, Thriving Within, then take a look at the show notes for all the resources and links. Always remember, you can overcome any obstacle. Let's do this together.